Automated Web Testing for Salesforce. My name's Vaughn, and today I'm going to show you the latest and greatest method of writing and automating test scripts for Salesforce using the open source platform Playwright. Whilst Playwright can test any web application, our focus will specifically be on testing Salesforce systems. Whether it's your internal Salesforce platform, your Salesforce community or web portal, or in fact any website you have that is connected with your Salesforce org, you can record and write automated test scripts with Playwright quickly and easily. What is Playwright, I hear you ask? Playwright is a modern, free, and open source web testing platform. Playwright allows us to record our test scripts directly from browser into your test script. These scripts can then be fine-tuned to work with precise and repeatable results. Playwright is fast and easy to use, and it's free for personal or commercial use. Sounds great, so how do we do this? Today, I will show you how to set up Playwright with your Salesforce system and repository, set up your local machine to record, test, and edit Playwright scripts, how to record your first test script, how to review, amend, and validate this test script, how to reconcile test script outcomes with your Salesforce system data, and finally, how to take these test scripts and automate them in your DevOps pipeline. Sound good? Let's get to it. Okay, so I've got my Salesforce system here, and in VS Code, I've got my source code ready to work on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open a terminal, and in here we're going to install Playwright. So I'm going to say npm init Playwright, and I'm going to tag that to the latest version. And that's going to run, and that's going to say, do you want to install the following packages? I'm going to say yes. And npm is going to run. Do I want to use TypeScript or JavaScript? Today we're going to use TypeScript. We're going to put the tests into the tests folder, which is the suggested option there, and click enter. Do I want to add a GitHub Actions workflow? The answer is yes. We're going to do one of those at the end of the video, so I'm going to say yes. Do we want to install the browsers? And the answer here is yes. So we're going to let that install run, and we'll come back when that's ready. Okay, so Playwright's installed. Why don't we just test our installation now? I'm going to take one of these sample commands, and we're going to run npx playwright test --ui. So I'll just paste that in here. And we should see the interactive UI mode pop up. There it is. And inside here, there is an example test script. So I'm just going to click on that test script, and I'm going to say run. And I can see that I've got 2 green ticks, so that's actually passed. I've got a pass symbol here. I can click on each of the steps of that test script, and I can see its action, its before and its after result. And a second step, get started link, before and after version. Excellent. It looks like Playwright is installed. Excellent. It looks like Playwright is installed successfully. Let's close that down. And so the second thing we want to do here is install the VS Code plugin for Playwright. So let's go over here to extensions. I'm just going to type in Playwright and click enter. And you want to find the Microsoft plugin. So I'm going to click install on him. Installing. That went pretty quick. So we can get out of this one now. And on installation, what this has done is it's also added the testing navbar item on the left. And if I click on this, I can see down the bottom here, there's a Playwright section, and up the top is the list of the tests that Playwright has installed for me, this example test. So the next thing I can do is, let's say, click on show browser. I can open up this example test script, and I'm going to click play on that one. And it's going to run the same tests for me, and it's going to do it in an interactive manner so I can see what's going on. It's finished the test already. I can close Chromium there. And over here in VS Code, I can see I've got 2 passed tests. So now we're ready to record our very first test script. So in Visual Studio Code, this is my Salesforce repository. I've got my source code all here. And over in Safari, I've got my Salesforce portal that we want to test. So the first thing I'm actually going to do here is copy the URL from Safari. Then we're going to create a new test script, and we're going to do some recording. So under our testing side panel here, I'm going to just make sure show browser is ticked. and I'm going to click the button Record New. Now, a couple of things have happened already. Number one is it's created a new test script file for us, and it's marked it as recording, which is excellent. And then it's brought up this Chromium browser. And so we're recording right now. I can paste my URL in here and click enter. And that brings up my portal homepage. And so every step that we perform in this browser right now will be recorded to the test script in the background there. So why don't we record something? So in the portal, I'm going to register a business, and we're going to use that as the basis of our test. So I'm going to click on Register My Business. That's going to open up the registration form. And from here, I'm just going to click through each of the fields and populate it with some data. All right, so I've filled in the form with some test data. I'm just going to click Submit My Details button at the bottom of the page. And now I get a thank you page. Great. So why don't we click Stop Recording here and review the test script that has been created from my actions here. So we're just going to edit this script as we go along for formatting and for readability reasons. The first thing that happened was we keyed in a URL and clicked enter. And so the test script, its first step is go to this URL. That makes sense. The second thing we did was click on the registration link. And so we can see here, it gets a link that's called Register My Business and it clicks on it. Makes sense. Then the next thing it does here is it goes through the form and populates it with the test data that I keyed in. So for each of these fields, it clicks on it and populates it with some data. And then the last thing it does is it goes down to the Submit My Details button and it clicks on that. Great. So it looks like my test script has captured all of my actions. I'm just going to click Save on this script. And I think what we should do here is test if the script works. I'm just going to go over to Chromium. Let's close that down. And then over here on the left-hand panel in VS Code, I can see the test1 test script that's been created here. And inside it, there's a test called test. So maybe the first thing I'll do here is we'll rename this to say Register Business. Click Save on him. There's my Register Business test script right here. I'm going to click Run on that. And now we see Chromium load up. It loads the URL that we keyed in. It clicks on the register link. It populates the form with all of the data that we keyed in. Clicks the Submit button. And now we've landed on a thank you page. So not only have we recorded a test script now, we've played it and we've received a correct result. So that's excellent news. If I go back into VS Code and I close this down, if we look at the script, we can see it's got timing metrics on each of the steps. Now, running the script and getting to a thank you page, I think that constitutes a successful test, but we need to be able to verify the results. So what I want to do here is let's put some space underneath my script. Let's put my cursor just underneath the last step there. And I'm going to go over and I'm going to click Record at Cursor. That brings Chromium back up and it's back in record mode. So the first thing I'm going to do here is not click on anything in the web page itself, but I'm just going to go up to this toolbar at the top and I'm going to click this Assert Text button. Now it's going to give me the selector. So I'm going to pick a piece of the web page here. I'm going to click Thank You. And then down the bottom here, we get a pop-up that says, assert the element that contains the text. So it's pre-populated with the words thank you. I'm going to say accept that. And if we jump back over to VS Code, it's now added an expect tag into my script. And I think we'll go back into Chromium and we'll say stop the test, stop the record. And so if I was to now replay this script and click run, it replays each of the steps that we've performed. It gets to the thank you page, and now it verifies that we are indeed on a thank you page. So if I go back to my script, one test has passed. Excellent news. Let's close this down. Why don't we now test whether or not this assert does work? And one easy way to do that would be, let's comment out one of my steps here. So first name is a mandatory field in the form. Let's comment that out so it does not perform that step when it runs the script. If I click run on this one now, we can watch it run the script, but it never gets to the thank you page when it submits the form. So I can see in the background here, the script has failed. So the assert's working correctly. It's validating and verifying the results of the test script. I would say that we've got a successful test script right there. All right, so I think we can enhance and improve our first test script. What should we do here? So I think the first thing we'll do here is, let's just give it a better name. Let's call it Register Business. And keep the file extension there the same. Now, the second thing here is we're using quite a lot of test data in the form that we've submitted. So I think it might be better actually if we move that test data to a separate file, and that'll allow us to change the test data dynamically and also set our test data more easily for our script. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, why don't we create a new file? I'm going to call it register business.json. And what I'm going to do here is define the form data separately in this JSON file so that the script can load and use that dynamically. So let's do that now. Okay, so we've got some test data in a JSON style format. I'm going to go back over to my test script. I'm just going to add a few things into this script so that it can load the JSON file and then use the data as part of the test script. So up the top, we just need to be able to access the file system. I'm going to define the name of the file at the top of the script. And then lastly, I'm going to add the ability for the system to load the JSON data. And then in each of the form elements that we populate, I'm just going to replace the hard-coded strings with tags from the JSON object. Okay, so we've replaced all of the hard-coded strings in the form data from the test script with references to the JSON object. So let's click save on that, and let's just check if that still works. There is a play button in the editor, so I'm just going to run that one. The test still works. Excellent. It's now loading my test data from a JSON file. Okay, the second thing I'd like to do here is we've got a hard-coded URL. I'd like to change that to be dynamic based on the Salesforce system that we're using. So one way to do that is using the Salesforce CLI, we can query our Salesforce system and get the link of the portal dynamically and load that into our test script so that it runs the URL for the very Salesforce system we're trying to test, not hard coding it into our test script. So let's do that now. What I'm going to do here is at the top, we're going to define the name of my Salesforce site, which is the Salesforce portal. And I'm going to define the name of the Salesforce org that we're going to be testing with. Now, we're testing out of an org called Tracking2. So let's set that up right now. The second thing we want to do here is using the Salesforce CLI, let's query that org and retrieve this URL. Okay, so we're running a shell command, an exec command to run the Salesforce CLI. And this CLI is just running a data query. It's going to run this query against the org name that has been specified at the top of the script. And it's going to run this query for me. It's going to return the output of the query. And because I've tagged it as a JSON return result, that gives us the ability to then pass the JSON and then find the relevant field value that we need, which is the ID in this case. And then we have to run a second query because that's how Salesforce Sites works to get the secure URL for our Salesforce site. So we'd run a second query based on the ID of the first query. And with that, we have a Salesforce site URL that we want to use. Now, lastly, what I want to do is we'll just replace this page go to from a hard-coded string to use our variable name. Great. Why don't we test our script now and see if that's working? If I look in the background here, it's taking a little bit longer, but I can see now it's loading the Salesforce site. And it seems to have figured out the site URL, and now it's performing the test registration, and we get a thank you page. Excellent. So just like that, we've been able to query Salesforce based on a specific org name, and then make our test script use a dynamic URL. Excellent. Now, it's all well and good to test our results based on what the HTML is returning to us, so the web page is returning to us. But I think there's a chance here also for us to assert the result against the Salesforce database. So we can actually add some Salesforce queries into our script to confirm that the data on the thank you page actually matches what's in the Salesforce database at the end of the script. So why don't we try adding a few things here now? And the first thing we're going to do is we'll just add 4 lines of code. And what it's going to do is read the URL from the thank you page and retrieve the ID parameter. So we get the page URL. We define that into a URL object in JavaScript. We're going to get the search property out of the URL and put that into a URL search parameters object. With that, we run an expect to say this must have the ID parameter, so to be true. And then lastly, we're going to get the ID parameter value out of our URL, and I'm going to call that the page GUID. The second thing I want to do here now is we're going to run a Salesforce query with the business name from our JSON test data and see if our page GUID matches what's in the Salesforce database. So this query is going to get the ID, the name, and the GUID from the account record where name matches. Based on the results of this query, we're going to pass the JSON result set and define an account name, an account ID, and account GUID variable in my test script. And the last thing I want to do now is 2 things. Let's run a test to expect, does the account name from Salesforce match my JSON test data business name? And then secondly, does the account GUID match what was on the page itself? So let's see if the test script still works. Open up my test panel here and click run. Great. So let's have a look at our test script and our results. 1 test has passed. That's excellent. Let's close that down. And over here, it has run my query. It has asserted the results and has passed the test. So from this point, we can say here, test has passed. Now there's one more change I'd like to do to this script before we're finished, and that is idempotence. So this script creates an account and a contact record every time, and I'd like my test system to be fairly clean. So we can add another Salesforce command in here to either remove this test data at the end of the script or at the start of the script to ensure that it's operating correctly. So an easy way to do that would be, let's go to the top of the page. Let's say let clear test data. And I might even do it this way. Before equals true. And after, I'll say false just for now. So I might just put it in here and say clear test data. So this one's pretty straightforward. If we're flagged the clear test data before flag as true, we're going to run this Salesforce command data delete record, and it will delete the record where it matches the name of the business from our test data set. And then at the end of the script, optionally, we can mop up after what the test has done as well. So If clear test data after flag is true, we can run the same command as well. I'm going to leave that second one as false so that we can see the outcome in Salesforce. So I'll save that script. Let's click run. You can see that's cleared the test data and success is true. And in my test script, I can see each step that the test script is running as it goes through. And I've got one test that's passed. So I would call that a complete script now. This script can use defined data sets for its test input. It can load a URL and action that URL dynamically based on the Salesforce org that we're testing. It'll complete the form. It'll submit the form. It'll expect a thank you page. And if we don't get a thank you page, it'll throw an error. And lastly, it can confirm the data in Salesforce against what was on the thank you page with a query. And finally, at the end of the script, it tidies up after itself and it cleans away any test data. That's a pretty good script. So that's all well and good for testing an external website in Salesforce. But what about testing Salesforce directly itself? That's no problem. Why don't we do a test script just for Salesforce? Let's close some of this stuff down. Go over to our file system. Just for convenience sake, I'm going to clone my existing test. And I'm just going to call this create new account. Great. And the second thing I want to do here is we just amend this a little bit so that it's working for what we need in Salesforce. We'll keep our test data here. There's no site name. We will use the Salesforce org out of Salesforce CLI, and we'll keep our tags here. We will continue to use our test data. I think that makes sense. We can clear our test data at the start of the script. But here, get Salesforce site URL, we want to change that. So we're not using a Salesforce site URL now. We're actually going to use the Salesforce internal URL. And so one way to record your script might be to go to salesforce.com and log in the traditional manner and record a username and a password and do that. I'm not a big fan of capturing login credentials into a hard-coded string and into a test script. What I'd like to do is use the Salesforce CLI to provide me a pre-authenticated login URL for my test script to run from there. So what we're going to do here is we'll run the Salesforce org open command, and we'll get it to take us straight to the home page, and it's going to return to us the URL of the home page ready to go for our script. And so just change this bit here over to Salesforce URL. Great. Now the second thing that we need to do here is Salesforce is pretty heavy when it comes to using JavaScript and other frameworks in its Lightning interface. So at the start of the script, I just need to add a test slow flag so that my Playwright test script does not time out. It has a default timeout of 30 seconds. Setting the slow flag gives you an extra 90 seconds. Now the next thing I'd like to do here is let's remove our steps from our portal registration page. So I'm just going to delete all of these lines. Move this up. Great. So it's going to start here and it's going to open the URL as required. What I think I'll do here is just comment this code out for now, click save, and go into my testing framework. And let's test the test script up until this point. I'm going to click run. Great. So Salesforce is open and it's ready for me to do something new. So I'm going to jump back into my test script, go down to the bottom of my last step, and I'm going to click record at cursor. That brings Chromium back up in record mode. And so now we're going to perform our next test. And that is, I'm going to click on the accounts tab. Up comes accounts. I'm going to click on the new button. Now, in most Salesforce systems, it'll ask you to select a record type. Even though this one's pre-selected, I'm just going to click on it again just to ensure that it's always selected, and click the next button. And now I've got a form that I'm going to fill in. And at the end of the form, I'm going to click Save. I get a success message saying that my test business record was created. And then Salesforce loads the detail view of my account record. Excellent. So I'm going to click Stop here. I'm going to go back into my test script. I can see my actions have been recorded here. So the first thing it does is it clicks on the accounts link, which is the tab. It then clicks on the new button. And as part of the new button, it selects a record type. It fills in the account details and we click the Save button. Excellent. So a couple of changes that we might need to make here just in terms of making Playwright more compatible for Playwright is, I'm just going to change my account details to use my JSON form. And we want to assert the result here. So there's a couple of things that we need to do for Salesforce. Salesforce is a little bit slow and it runs things a little bit more dynamically. We just need to make sure that Playwright is waiting for the page to have fully loaded. So I'm going to say wait for the URL //view, which is a view record page. And then secondly, I'm going to wait for it to load all of the elements within that view record page. And so I'm going to wait for the selector records highlights too. And if I go back into Chromium, I'm going to assert the name that I've typed in to my form against this header value here. And so in this way, I've said expect based on the page locator record highlights too. I want it to contain the text, the business name from my test data set. So the next thing we can do here is we've just asserted the result so that we know we're on a success page. I'm going to add some code in here to retrieve the record ID from the Salesforce URL itself. And then based on the record ID, let's assert some values. So I expect in the URL that we've got the account object named. I expect in the URL that we've got the view tag flagged. And then lastly, I'm going to capture the account ID from that URL and we're going to log it to console. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click Save, and I think we should test if this test script works. So I'm going to click Run. Okay, so you can see a successful account has been created. And if I have a look at the test results over here, we've got one test passed. And in my output log, I've got the account ID captured for me here. So I can do something with that if I wish. I can query the database and confirm the results in the database against my test data set. I think what we'll do is now, just to tidy this up, is we can call that test passed. And then if we want to, we can clean out our test data if necessary. Excellent. Okay, so we've recorded a couple of tests now and we've verified they're working. I think the very next step here is to automate our test scripts. And what we're going to do here is we're going to get into the Playwright YAML file that is under the GitHub Workflows folder. So they give you this standard file here, and it's not a bad place to start in terms of running a test. I'm just going to amend this ever so slightly so that we can use it with Salesforce. Let's just do that now. Okay, so that looks pretty good now. So in this Playwright YAML file for GitHub, I've just added workflow dispatch. That means that we can run our tests manually under the Actions tab in GitHub. We've added some environment variables for Salesforce CLI. And I've rewritten ever so slightly this run tests job from the standard one. Timeout is 60 minutes. It's going to run on Ubuntu. Under the steps, it checks out our repository into the job runner. It installs the Salesforce CLI. It then authenticates the Salesforce org of our choosing into the workflow runner. Now, the way authentication will work is that under secrets in GitHub, you will have to add your Salesforce DX URL for your org. And our one's going to be called tracking01. So I've added that here. This will authenticate into that org. The next thing it does is it installs any NPM dependencies, and then it will install Playwright, both the module and the browsers. And then lastly, it will execute the tests under the test folder. So right now we've got our two tests. We've got create a new account directly in Salesforce, and we've got our register business via the portal. And then lastly, we've got this upload artifact step, and I'll talk about that at the end of the test. The other thing I need to do here is just quickly review the Playwright config file. Okay, so there's a couple of changes I've just made to the config before we proceed. Firstly, under the use, I've added this video tag. So I want to be able to capture a video output of my tests as they happen. So each test script will produce a video record of each step, and that file will get uploaded somewhere. Secondly, I've just turned off Firefox and WebKit for this demo. I don't think we need to test it across 3 different browsers, not yet anyway. Let's close that down. So we've committed our changes, we've pushed them up to the server. Let's take a look what's going on GitHub. We'll jump into GitHub. We can go into our branch and we should be able to see any changes that we've made. I'm just going to jump into the Actions tab in GitHub, and under my Playwright tests action over here, I'm just going to run workflow. So make sure you pick the right branch that you're working within and click run. This will spawn a new GitHub action job. Give that a second to warm up. There it goes. Let's click on that job runner and let's see what's going on. Okay, excellent. So it's not the most detailed view on what the tests were running, given that it's running headless. But if I close down some of these actions here, we can see under the run Playwright tests step, it's run 2 tests. It looks like it's run the Salesforce test first and it's retrieved an account ID, so that's positive. It's run the second test here. And at the end of the day, it's shown me that we've got 2 tests passed. So we've got a green tick from the GitHub Actions workflow. Excellent. The next thing I can do is if you click on Summary, and down here we've got artifacts, which are files that Playwright has spat out at the end of the test. So I'm going to click Download on this. And this Playwright report shows me a couple of quick things. I'll just open it up. It gives me a report of the 2 tests that were run for this job, create new account and register business. This one took 28 seconds, this one took 17 seconds. And you'll see here, there's a little play button here. So I actually click play and I can go into this job and it can tell me all the metrics and how long each step took, as well as I can watch a video of what happened during the test. Now, when you're running tests and you're getting success results, that's helpful maybe to review that the test is working. However, this is probably most beneficial when you are reviewing a bug. So if a test fails for some reason, having a video record will likely give you an error message or a detail as to what went wrong. And that's where you can investigate or then go back and go debugging your code. So having a video, excellent, very, very handy. So that leaves us with one more thing to do, and that is instead of running our tests manually and instructing our jobs to run manually, I'm just going to jump back into my YAML file. So I'm just going to get the YAML to do a couple of quick things. First up, I'm going to add a scheduled command here into my YAML. So for workflow dispatch, that just means that this job is available for us to run manually. I can also enable these keys here so that on a push to main or master or on a pull request to main or master, these tests will run, so it's event driven. Now, lastly, we can run it on a schedule. So I've set this up to run at 3 a.m. every day. If I click save on that and I can commit my changes there, click commit and synchronize my changes back to GitHub. This test that we just saw will now run at 3 a.m. every day. Any results will be stored on the server for a period of time. And in the event of any failed tests, I'll receive an email notification for me to investigate and debug what went wrong. Okay, so that has been a very quick and brief demo into getting Playwright automated tests working with your Salesforce system. We went through setting up your Salesforce repository with Playwright, setting up your local machine to use and record Playwright scripts, recording your first test script, amending, validating, and proving that this first test script works. We confirmed the test script output with the data inside of your Salesforce system. And lastly, we automated your test scripts in a DevOps pipeline, both manually and periodically on a nightly schedule. What did you think of this demo? Did you like it? Please leave a comment below. My name's Vaughn, and that is the end of our demo.